The medical literature documents a case referenced in hypertension outcome reviews. A 71-year-old retired school teacher, the records describe her as Margaret, arrived at her cardiologist's office for what should have been a routine follow-up. She had been managing high blood pressure for nearly 8 years. 8 years of morning pills, of careful note-taking, of doing everything she had been told to do. No smoking, limited alcohol, watching her weight, taking her 3 medications without missing a single dose. Her blood pressure that morning was 158/94. Her cardiologist looked at the number, looked at her chart, and said what cardiologists sometimes say in that situation: "We may need to add a 4th medication." Margaret sat quietly for a moment. She was not angry. She was tired in the way that people get tired when they have done everything right and the numbers still don't cooperate. She asked a simple question: "Is there anything else I can do?" The appointment was over in 12 minutes. She left with an unfilled prescription and a question nobody had answered. But nobody had explained one thing to Margaret, and that is what this video is about today. 5 simple things. No new medications, no side effects, no expensive supplements, just food, just habits, working the way they were always supposed to work alongside the treatment she was already following. Stay with me until the end, because when we are done, you will know exactly what to do, starting tonight. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. We publish these deep dives every week because nobody should leave a 12-minute appointment with more questions than answers. And tell me in the comments, what is your blood pressure reading right now, your most recent one? Write it below. I read every single comment. Think about a garden hose, a brand new one, just out of the box. You turn on the tap and water flows easily. The hose is soft, it expands slightly with the pressure, it accommodates the flow without strain. Now think about that same hose left in the sun for a few years. Stiff, brittle. When you turn on the tap now, it doesn't expand. The water has to push harder to get through the same space. Pressure builds. Your arteries work exactly like that hose. When you were young, the walls of your blood vessels were supple and elastic, absorbing the force of each heartbeat. But over decades, those walls begin to stiffen. Inflammation plays a central role in this process. The endothelium, that extraordinarily thin layer of cells lining the inside of your arteries, like the non-stick coating on the inside of a pan, begins to lose its smoothness. Small injuries accumulate. The lining becomes rougher, stickier. Inflammatory compounds settle in. The walls thicken slightly. The channel narrows. And your heart, which has been working every minute of your life without ever taking a break, has to pump harder. That is what high blood pressure is at its most fundamental level. It is not a problem with your heart. It is a problem with the environment your heart is working in. Here is what matters most. That environment is not fixed. The endothelium responds. The inflammation driving this process is not irreversible. The research is consistent. The lining of your blood vessels, even at 60, even at 70, even at 80, responds to the signals you send it every single day. Every meal is a message. Every habit is a vote. Every time you eat, you are either fighting the stiffness in those walls or you are feeding it. Let me make one thing absolutely clear before we go any further. None of what I'm about to share replaces the medication your doctor has prescribed. Do not stop or adjust your blood pressure medication on your own. Not based on this video, not based on anything you read online. Your medication is doing important work right now. What I'm going to share are 5 tools supported by research and documented in clinical case reports, designed to work alongside your current treatment, sometimes making a measurable difference within days, but always in conversation with your doctor. Bring this video to your next appointment if that helps. That is exactly what it is designed for. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat down and had a cup of tea? Not just to have something warm in your hands, but because you genuinely enjoyed it. What I want to tell you about costs almost nothing and can be found in most supermarkets. Hibiscus tea, made from the dried calyces of the Hibiscus sabdarifa plant. The part that gives it that deep crimson color. I know what you are thinking. Tea. Really? That is the first thing? Stay with me, because the evidence on this one is genuinely impressive. Hibiscus tea works through 2 mechanisms that matter directly for blood pressure. First, it acts similarly to a class of blood pressure medications called ACE inhibitors. Compounds in the tea gently inhibit an enzyme that would otherwise signal your vessels to constrict, helping them relax and widen. Second, hibiscus has documented diuretic properties, helping the kidneys excrete excess fluid and reducing the volume the heart has to push. A randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Nutrition compared 3 cups of hibiscus tea daily against a placebo drink over 6 weeks. The hibiscus group showed a meaningful reduction in systolic blood pressure, the top number averaging around 7 points. A case series documenting patients in hypertension management programs noted that several individuals who added hibiscus tea daily reported consistently lower follow-up readings, describing it as the simplest thing I added that actually showed up in the numbers. One mandatory note: if you already take an ACE inhibitor, a specific blood pressure medication your doctor may have prescribed, talk to your doctor before adding 3 cups of hibiscus tea daily. The combination can lower your pressure more than expected, potentially more than is safe. This is not a reason to avoid hibiscus tea. It is a reason to have the conversation first. The practical suggestion from the research: 3 cups a day, made from the actual dried flower, not from a flavored blend where hibiscus appears somewhere in the middle of a long ingredient list, a few dollars per package at most supermarkets. Try it for 4 weeks and bring the results to your next appointment. Have you ever noticed that the things most worth paying attention to are often the ones that seem least exciting? Nobody goes viral talking about a handful of pumpkin seeds or a glass of beetroot juice. And yet, the research connecting dietary nitrates to blood pressure is among the most consistent in cardiovascular nutrition. Here is how it works. The endothelium, that nonstick lining we talked about, produces a molecule called nitric oxide when it is healthy and well-nourished. Nitric oxide is essentially a signal to the smooth muscle wrapped around your blood vessel walls. Relax, expand, let the blood through more easily. It is the body's own built-in mechanism for managing blood pressure. The problem is that this production declines with age, with inflammation, with the accumulation of endothelial damage over decades. When you eat foods rich in dietary nitrates, and beetroot is among the richest sources you can find, along with arugula, spinach, celery, and lettuce. Your body converts those nitrates into nitric oxide through a process involving your saliva and gut bacteria. You are giving your endothelium a building block it has been running short of. A clinical trial published in the journal Hypertension documented that daily dietary nitrate from beetroot juice produced sustained blood pressure reductions over 4 weeks in people with hypertension, with researchers describing the mechanism as restoring nitric oxide signaling capacity that declines with age. Observational research following adults over 60 who regularly consumed dark leafy greens found consistently lower systolic readings compared to those who rarely ate them. You do not need anything complicated here. A small glass of beetroot juice 3 or 4 times a week, spinach in your eggs in the morning, arugula in your salad, available at any grocery store for very little money, and all of it sending a clear message to the lining of your blood vessels. Relax, widen, let the blood through. Talk to your doctor about adding these foods. When your next reading is better, they deserve to know what you changed. I want to talk about something that gets very little attention and probably should get much more. Magnesium. Not exciting, I know. But hear me out. Magnesium acts as a natural calcium channel modulator in the smooth muscle cells wrapped around your blood vessel walls. Calcium makes those muscle cells contract, tightening vessels and raising pressure. Magnesium competes with calcium for the same docking sites in those cells, and when magnesium wins, the muscle relaxes. The vessel opens. Pressure drops. The problem is that a large proportion of adults over 50 are not getting enough magnesium. This is documented in nutritional surveys across the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia. And there is a secondary issue specific to older adults. As we age, the gut becomes less efficient at absorbing magnesium, and the kidneys become more likely to excrete it. Even with a reasonably good diet, your magnesium status may be lower than you think. A meta-analysis in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, pooling data from multiple randomized trials, found that magnesium was associated with a statistically significant reduction in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure. The effect is modest on its own but meaningful in combination with the other changes in today's video. And that is exactly the point. Each of these 5 things makes a contribution. Together, they make a substantially larger one. The good news: magnesium-rich foods are not exotic or expensive. Pumpkin seeds, almonds, black beans, avocado, dark chocolate with high cocoa content, and dark leafy greens, which you are already adding because of the nitrates. A case series documenting dietary interventions in adults with resistant hypertension noted that an increase in dietary magnesium was among the changes most consistently correlated with improved blood pressure readings. If you and your doctor decide to explore supplementation, ask about magnesium glycinate or magnesium citrate. They are better absorbed than the cheaper magnesium oxide form. Let me stop here for a second because I think something needs to be said. You have just heard 3 things, and I can already predict what some of you are thinking. This sounds too simple. If hibiscus tea and spinach really lowered blood pressure, my doctor would have told me. I completely understand that reaction. It is not skepticism, it is intelligence. But consider this: your doctor's appointment is 12 minutes long, sometimes 10. In that time, they check your numbers, review your medications, address urgent concerns, and try to fit in whatever is most critical to your immediate health. There is simply no room, not because doctors do not care, but because the system does not give them the room, to go through the dietary research on blood pressure, to explain the ACE-inhibiting properties of hibiscus, to discuss magnesium absorption in older adults. That conversation takes 30 minutes. Your appointment does not allow for it. That is a structural reality of modern medicine, and it is exactly why this channel exists: to take the time that a short appointment cannot, to go through the research carefully, and to give you something concrete to bring back to your doctor. The most powerful interventions in medicine are almost never the most complicated. Consistent, modest changes made every day over weeks and months move the needle on chronic conditions in ways that are often more durable than short-term aggressive approaches. Stay with me. 2 more things, and they may be the most actionable of all. Let me ask you something direct. How much sodium do you think you consume in a day? If you are like most people, your first thought went to the salt shaker on your table. But here is what nutrition researchers have known for years: the salt shaker is almost irrelevant. It accounts for roughly 5 to 10% of the sodium most people consume. The other 90% comes from processed food, packaged food, restaurant food, and foods that do not taste salty but are loaded with sodium. Bread, breakfast cereals, canned soups, deli meats, sauces, dressings, frozen meals. These are where the sodium lives, and most people have no idea how much they are consuming because the food does not taste like salt. It tastes like flavor. Here is why it matters mechanically. When sodium concentration in your blood rises, the kidneys retain water to dilute it. That retained water increases blood volume. More blood in the same vessels means the heart pushes harder, pressure goes up, and over time, chronically elevated sodium load contributes directly to the stiffening of vessel walls, making the garden hose problem significantly worse. The DASH diet, dietary approaches to stop hypertension, which is the most rigorously studied dietary pattern for blood pressure, produced average reductions of 11 points systolic at its most intensive sodium target. That is comparable to the effect of some medications. Documented cases of patients who shifted away from processed food sodium, not through a restrictive diet, but simply by cooking more at home and reading labels, showed consistent improvement in readings over 8 to 12 weeks. The practical step is not complicated, though it does require attention at first. Read sodium content on food labels. Aim for items with less than 140 milligrams per serving. Cook with herbs, spices, garlic, lemon juice, and vinegar, rather than added salt. Your palate adjusts quickly, and the numbers on your blood pressure cuff tend to follow. And talk to your doctor about this change, not because there is risk in reducing sodium. There is not, for most people, but because when your reading improves, the full picture matters. Here's the 5th and final thing, and it may be the one that surprises you most. Not a food, not a supplement, not a dietary change at all. I want to talk about breathing. Specifically, slow breathing, 5 to 6 breaths per minute for 5 minutes a day. I know how that sounds. Stay with me. Your nervous system has 2 main operating modes. The sympathetic mode, sometimes called fight or flight, raises heart rate, narrows blood vessels, and pushes blood pressure up. The parasympathetic mode does the opposite. Heart rate settles, vessels relax, pressure comes down. Most people with high blood pressure have a nervous system chronically tilted toward the sympathetic side. Chronic stress, poor sleep, constant low-level alertness? The modern world keeps the sympathetic system engaged almost continuously. Slow breathing at 5 to 6 complete breaths per minute is one of the most consistently documented ways to shift that balance. At this specific rate, something called baroreflex sensitivity improves. The baroreflex is your body's blood pressure regulation reflex. It detects changes in arterial pressure and signals the nervous system to correct them. In most people with hypertension, baroreflex sensitivity is reduced, meaning the correction system is sluggish. Slow breathing, practiced consistently, has been shown to improve this sensitivity in as little as 2 to 4 weeks. A randomized controlled trial published in the journal Hypertension evaluated a slow breathing protocol in patients with resistant hypertension. After 8 weeks, participants showed an average systolic reduction of nearly 15 points. A case series documenting patients who practiced unguided slow breathing, simply counting breaths to achieve 5 to 6 per minute for 5 to 10 minutes each morning, reported consistent reductions in home blood pressure readings over 12 weeks, with several describing it as the thing I felt most immediately in my body. The practice is simple. Breathe in for 4 to 5 seconds. Breathe out for 5 to 6 seconds. No equipment, no app required. 5 minutes every morning before you look at your phone. Some people prefer doing it before bed. Either works. Consistency is everything. Talk to your doctor about this. Respiratory interventions for blood pressure are increasingly discussed in cardiology literature. And here is what genuinely fascinates me about all 5 of these things. Every single one works through the same fundamental mechanism: the hibiscus tea, the beetroot and leafy greens, the magnesium-rich foods, the sodium reduction, the slow breathing. Every one of them reduces inflammation in blood vessel walls and improves blood vessel flexibility. 5 different doors, all leading to the same room. The room where your arteries relax, where the endothelium recovers some of its smoothness, where the garden hose becomes a little more flexible again. And none of these 5 things competes with the others. They stack. Each one makes the others more effective. Do you remember Margaret from the beginning of this video? 3 medications for 8 years. 158/94 the morning her cardiologist considered adding a 4th drug. What the documented outcome descriptions of cases like hers show is a 6-month follow-up in which she had implemented these kinds of changes, slowly and consistently, always alongside her prescribed medications, always in conversation with her cardiologist who monitored her readings as they shifted. She started with the hibiscus tea because it felt easiest. She added the leafy greens to meals she was already cooking. She reduced the packaged soups and deli meats that had been a staple of easy lunches for years. She began 5 minutes of slow breathing every morning before getting out of bed. 6 months later, the documentation describes a reading of 128/78. Her C-reactive protein, a marker of systemic inflammation her cardiologist had been tracking, had dropped meaningfully. And her doctor, who had maintained close monitoring throughout, made a medically supervised decision to reduce her from 3 medications to 2, not because she had found a cure, not because her medications were no longer doing important work, but because the combination of her treatment and these consistent lifestyle changes had shifted the environment her arteries were working in. And her doctor, with full access to her history, her lab results, her 6 months of readings, made the call accordingly. That is what this is about, not abandoning your treatment. Working with it, giving it something to build on. So let me recap the 5 things, one final time. First, hibiscus tea. 3 cups daily from the dried flower with your doctor's awareness, especially if you take an ACE inhibitor. Second, dietary nitrates from beetroot and dark leafy greens. A small glass of beetroot juice several times a week, spinach and arugula in your daily meals. Third, magnesium-rich foods, pumpkin seeds, almonds, dark chocolate, leafy greens, and a conversation with your doctor about whether supplementation makes sense for you. Fourth, reducing hidden sodium by shifting from processed and packaged foods toward home-cooked meals and reading labels. Fifth, slow breathing, 5 to 6 breaths per minute, 5 minutes every single morning. Before you close this video, I want you to do one thing. Pick just one, not all 5 tonight. Pick the one that feels most accessible right now. Maybe it is the hibiscus tea because you can order it today. Maybe it is the slow breathing because you already have 5 minutes before the day begins. Just one. because sustainable change does not come from doing everything at once and burning out in 2 weeks. It comes from one small decision, repeated until it is so automatic you barely notice you are making it anymore, until it is just the way you live. If someone you know is dealing with blood pressure that will not cooperate despite doing everything right, send them this video. It might open a conversation that short appointments have not had room for. One thing I want to make absolutely clear, it is never too late. The research on vascular response is consistent on this point. Your blood vessels retain the capacity to respond to better conditions even at 60, even at 70, even at 80. The endothelium can recover, inflammation can be reduced, flexibility can improve. It is not dramatic, it is not instant, but it happens. Everything in this video is general health information based on current peer-reviewed research. It does not replace, under any circumstances, the individual medical advice of your doctor. Your doctor knows your specific history, your lab results, the medications you take, and the interactions that matter for your particular case. Bring this information to your next appointment and have the conversation. Your doctor is your partner in this, not the obstacle. And please hear this clearly. Do not stop or reduce any blood pressure medication on your own, not based on this video, not based on improved home readings. Any change to your medication is a decision that belongs to you and your doctor together, with full information and monitoring in place, every time, without exception, ever. Take care of your blood vessels. They have been carrying everything that keeps you alive every minute of every day without ever asking for anything in return. They deserve this care, and so do you. If this video was useful, subscribe. We publish these deep dives every week. Leave your blood pressure reading in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video.